All right. This is the third, I believe it's the third week of our story building. And I'm David McCaleb again. And this is my daughter Abigail. And I purposefully haven't really, well, partially because of the holidays and partially because of, on purpose, I haven't really planned ahead on this story. I wanted to kind of just do it as we go here. So last we had left off, just real quick summary, Maytuck had that dream, if you remember, on the beach when his last time he had seen his sister. Now he wakes up on the Viking boat still. To his surprise, he thinks he should have maybe woken up at home or on the dock, but he wakes up at the Viking boat. His friend's name is, what is it? Do you have the summary there? I know Hafton, or, well, he's got a friend, and Abby will scroll down and get the name here.
Is Trifing?
Trifing, that's right. And Hafton is the taskman. And so they've learned that they're supposed to rescue the daughter of Leif Erikson, and that's their chieftain. And so now we kind of got to talk about where we want this to go, because I was thinking about this. They've only been on the water for a couple days, so they would have food stores for a couple days. It's not like they're going to be in full survival mode, like, okay, let's find shelter, water, and food. I mean, they would probably have food stores and even water stores would still be okay, because again, they've only been on the boat a couple days. Their mission is to find this daughter. They don't necessarily know where, because they haven't been down this far yet. They just know that the folks that kidnapped her, the locals that kidnapped her, are they migrate south. Now, how far south they probably don't know, but it can't be but so far. So they're up there in Canada. They migrate down the Appalachians, I guess. And so my thought is, they're on water. They know that the water, everybody needs water. The locals, like this stream or this creek that they're on, although it's leading into the ocean, eventually, you know, it's got to come from somewhere. And civilizations were typically around rivers. So my thought is, instead of going ashore and trying to walk it out there, they're in a boat. I mean, and the boats, the Viking longboats, were known for being maneuverable and able to go into shallow waters and everything. I say they stay in the boat and go upstream and see what happens. So let's do that. So they stay. Hafton, the next morning, Hafton, the taskman, orders them back on their, back at their stations, their rowing stations. But the tide is coming in, and so this is actually a perfect time for them to venture inland. So the tide's coming in. That means this is a creek. It's a tidal creek. That means that the tide will, and up there, up in Maine, the tide swings several feet. So, I mean, we're probably talking 6 to 8 feet of tide swing. And so this will be carried, their boat can be carried pretty swiftly inland on an incoming tide. And so let's say that's what they do. They shove off. It's a little bit different. They're not rowing so hard this time. What they're doing is they're taking orders from taskmen, or actually the steerman. I wonder what they would call that guy. We'll have to look that up and see what you actually call the guy that's the navigator. Let's call him navigator now. Maybe he had a real name, but you would call the navigator would tell which side needs to row at a certain time, just to be able to maintain course as the tide carries them in. And it's actually at a very swift pace, because if you remember, the oyster rocks, and they would kind of zigzag like at the mouths of these creeks and these rivers, oyster rocks would come out like fingers, and they would have to zigzag back and forth, and these oyster rocks can wreak havoc with a boat. So they had to be very careful as they were navigating in. And after let's say an hour and a half of this, the oyster rocks kind of gave way, and it was more of just a regular old creek, and it was a little bit wider, and they were able to kind of proceed inland. And so they're going inland. What do you think? Should they see evidence of people? Should they see nothing? I think they need to see ducks.
Mm-hmm. Maybe they could see like a pile of shells where the Indians have been.
Okay.
They use that for money sometimes.
Yeah, no, that would make sense. So the locals probably, yeah, let's say that like they're looking up on the shoreline, and then at a kind of a higher bluff, they see a trail leading down from the higher bluff down to the shoreline, and no one there. They don't see anybody, but at the higher bluff, they do see a pile of shells. Because I do know that the locals would do that. They would eat the oysters in the wintertime, probably in the summertime too. But they would eat oysters and they would pile them up, and just the shells up there at wherever they were. So they see some evidence of humans. Now, where they're trying to recapture this gal. Number one, right now they don't know if the people they run into, number one, if they're going to run into anybody. Number two, if the people they run into are the same folks that capture. So I don't think they're going to, yeah, I keep on thinking that they need to go ashore to be more stealthy. But at this point, I don't think they're concerned about that. I mean, they're Vikings, they're very apt on their boat. And so I don't think that they're worried about raiding parties coming out and getting them.
The Vikings, when I was reading, they said that they would like go attack a settlement and get back really quick. Mm-hmm.
They're very quick. So let's say they keep on going. The thing that I see them saying is different species of duck. They're flocks of. Even though it's we're in Maine. We're in Maine in the wintertime. I don't know what's in Maine in the wintertime, to tell you the truth. I know down here in the wintertime, there are definitely ducks and geese, and that's not a problem at all. In Maine, we might have to determine what it is. Maybe they see puffins or something like that. But there are probably still some geese that are up there. There's got to be some wildfowl. And they keep on pushing inland. It's actually not wintertime, though, is it? It's actually, what time of the year did we say? It's before winter. It's at the end of the summer. It's before winter. So yeah, there would still be geese. There would be Canada geese. There would still be ducks up there. Yeah. That's something we didn't address though. Like when Matthew was on the dock, it was at the end of the summer, before winter. So kind of like the fall time, at the end of basically fall time frame. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the time that he's got to show up in this Viking world. But just for consistency, let's say it is. And so, yeah, there would be a lot of wildfowl. Yeah, bobcats, that's true. They could see bobcat. There's one that's actually next to river, and bear, black bear. Brown bear are further out in the west. So black bear, bobcat, fox, and wolf.
Moose.
We'll have to bring in, oh yeah, moose. Holy cow.
They probably like their antlers.
Yeah. We'll have to bring in some of this, even if, like, symbolically, somehow. So let's see where this goes, Abby. They keep on going inland, and the tide, they've been riding it, let's say, for 4 hours now, and so the tide's about to kind of come to an end. Normally what you would do if you were riding the tide, and you don't want to fight the tide, so in other words, you would ride in until the tide stops, you would anchor, and then you would wait for the tide to come in again. So as the tide goes out, you would be anchored. Then when the tide comes in, you would ride it in again as far as it can take you. And so that's the way that they would do it. so that the tide's about to become slack, and they come around a corner, and they see kind of a sandy. No, it's in Maine. It's not going to necessarily be sandy. It's going to be probably rocky, kind of like pebbles and rounded river stones. Off to the starboard side, they're going to see a low spot, kind of like where I don't know what you would call it, but where the creek comes around a corner, and it's kind of like got washout up on a beach, and so it's this rocky beach, and they see some structures there, and but as of yet they're unoccupied. At least they don't see anybody. What do you think? Should they see people there?
Probably not.
Yeah, kind of like they might have known that they were coming.
Maybe like some hunters saw them coming.
Okay, so they see these okay. So they see these they see these huts. I guess they're going to have to be huts. I'm going to assume where it's still further north, they're going to be better than teepees. They're going to have skins over them for certain, but they're going to be fairly thick walled twigs. What do they call those things? That the huts that are made of like the thick walled, made out of twigs and grasses, and I'm trying to remember. But anyway, they're more like winter quarters, and so they go ahead and they anchor there. Actually, no, they don't anchor right in front of them. They want to anchor downstream of them, because if they're going to get a fast exit, if they need a fast exit, that's where they're going to be. They also, where it's high tide right now, they don't anchor right on shore. They anchor a ways out, because they know that the tide's going to go out, and if they need to make a fast exit, they don't want their boat to be on these rocks, although they could carry it. If they, in an absolute emergency, they could push it, but it would hurt the boat. The boats were light, well, relatively speaking, and so they anchor it in about 6 feet of water, and the men. So what does have to do? Give me some ideas.
Well, are they gonna rate it? Because if they rate it, they go like out really fast and they come back in, and then keep on moving.
Well, they're going to be concerned about, like, they don't know if this is the same as the right place. Like, they may need to be able to find out where, like, if this is the people, okay, yeah, they'll be ready to take her back, but chances are it's not. In other words, chances are they're going to have to. They could definitely go in there, and if there are just a few of them, they could raid them. But then, have they really gotten what they came after? I mean, their orders are to get this daughter back, and so I think they're going to go over. They're going to go over fully armed, but also ready to barter.
I think that they'd be more willing to raid because they don't sound like they were traders as much.
Oh, Vikings were very much traders. Absolutely, they traded in silver. They traded in slaves. They traded in. Vikings were actually largely they enjoyed farming, and they definitely were known for being. I mean, they didn't have a hard time going out and taking from other people, but
and the Indians of Maine lived in wigwams.
Wigwams, okay. We'll have to kind of see what they are. I'd like to attach some sights, some smells, and so. Yeah, I like that one. You guys can't see this, but it's basically made out of grasses and mud. It looks like. Now, so in this case, it would largely be grasses and a really thick walled, really thick top. And I'm going to say that 2 of them have smoke coming through the top.
So that they know that Indians used to live there.
And so they go ahead and Taskman orders them overboard. and he orders half of them. Someone's got to guard the boat, because they're not going to let it go by. So they're going to order. He's going to order like 3 or 4 of them to stay. We need to know how many people there are. Let's go ahead and say there are 20 on this boat.
I might do more because they say that they could get up to it.
Oh, the huge ones can get up, yeah, but the normal ones were probably.
Let's say there's
50. That's a big boat.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge boat, and it might be kind of hard for us in terms of. I would say, I think 20 is too small. Let's say they're like 30 to 40. Let's say 35 men. He leaves 5 on the boat, and the other 30 grab their swords and their shields. Their shields are made. They're just basically heavy wood, and they do have like metal, like a bronze overlay. They're painted. I'm going to say, or at least some have a bronze overlay. Some are just wood. I'm going to say that Matox is just wood, and it's painted yellow and black. Yellow is sulfur and black in kind of a cross pattern. And he notices it, but he doesn't ask questions at this point in time. He grabs his sword. His sword is the handle. He knows. I think I mentioned this already. Is shark skin, and it feels like sandpaper, and he reasons in case his hand gets messy or wet. In reality, it's because if your hand gets bloody in battle, you can still grip your sword. But it's not a long sword. It's about 2.5 feet in length, not like a yardstick. Let's call it about 2.5 feet in length, and it's heavy. But he notices like his hands go around it easily, and it feels right. It feels familiar, and he's looking at it, and that's when Hafton knocks him on the back of the head and says that he ordered him overboard. He's daydreaming, and that's actually something that Matthew used to do quite a bit, was daydream. And so here he was, even in his supposed dream, daydreaming, and he sheathes his sword. He doesn't know. He knows how to swim, but he's in 6 feet of water, and he's carrying a shield, and he's going to sink. I mean, he's got no fat on him. He realizes he's going to sink. It's freezing cold, but he has been somewhat warmed by doing some rowing. So he goes ahead and he follows the other men. He jumps overboard and he sinks down to where it's about immediately. The only thing that it's like his arm is kind of floating up because his arm is a hold of his shield and he doesn't want to let go of his shield. But he realizes it's not very deep. He kind of jumps up and takes a breath, and then he goes back down, and he's walking on these rocks, these river rocks that are a foot oblong, and they're slipping under his feet as he's walking underwater. It's very awkward, but he does this every few seconds. He'll jump up and take a breath, and then go back down, and the water is freezing, ice bitter cold, and the weight of his skins that are on him kind of weight him down. But he gets to the just maybe about 10-15 feet out, and then he's far enough up the side of the river, the creek as we call it, that he can stick his head out and make his way up. So he follows the other men up, and the other men are kind of taking off their skins and wringing them out and jogging up the creek, up the side of the creek. And that's exactly what he does. Number one, to warm himself, and number two, so he doesn't get left behind. So he's jogging, he's following at least 20 other men, and they're running into the village, and they're going into these wigwams, sword first, and the place is empty. I mean, they're probably, let's take a look. I mean, they're probably 50 wigwams in this settlement, and the entire place is empty. 2 of them have smoke coming through the top. No, I'm going to say half of them have small fires still burning and smoldering inside. But they come into one, and there's a very old man, and laying down, one eye just barely being able to open up. And so the reason being is, if you have to flee quickly, there's some people you can't bring with you. And so this guy's going to be old. He's going to be sick. And so they left him behind.
I would think that they would just be hiding and then jump out.
Well, the Vikings.
The Indians probably weren't completely abandoned. Like anytime somebody came into their territory.
No, that's a good point. So we could have it populated. We could have everybody there. But what if the hunters had seen them, and what if the Vikings were known?
Yeah, or the Vikings looked like gods to them.
If they look like gods, they probably want to stick around.
Maybe they were bad gods. But they probably, because if they did hear about them, that means that they might have also heard about the girl with the red hair.
Yeah, I think that, well, we can go one of 2 ways. Either they come out and they are able just to, like, everybody's there, or we could make it to where their reputation has preceded them, and therefore the place is empty. Mm-hmm. I like I don't know which way to go. What do you think?
I think that the chief should be there to talk to the chief of the Indian settlement, and that it should be guarded. I don't think that the Indians would have fled.
What if it's not that important of a settlement?
I still think if it's 50 wigwams, I think that's probably.
So you think the chief should be there?
And all the warriors.
Okay. So where are the women and children and those? Have they shuffled them off somewhere?
Maybe, or I bet they're probably hiding in their teepees and stuff. I don't think they would have fled. The women actually did more work than the men.
In some of the cultures, Indian cultures, you're true. But when it came to fighting, I think the men largely did the fighting. So, okay, let's say that they were there. Forget the fact that it was empty. Let's go ahead and say that they saw some movement. They thought it was empty. Let's do that. They thought it was empty. The men were running up to it. And then and they have swords drawn. Or are they going to ransack the place? They going to kill them?
Probably not at first, because if they want to trade with them, like killing people is not a good idea.
Yeah. So let's say they get up to the dry shore, and let's say 20 warriors come out with spear, and they're clothed in. We got to describe these guys. I mean, it's Maine. It's going to start getting cold. So they're not going to be very tall. I mean, they're going to be maybe 5 feet, because I don't think the indigenous Indians were that tall in this area. Let's say they're 5 feet, darker skinned, and they have spears, and they come out to them. And pardon me, I keep on coughing. So they have these spears, and they're coming out at them, and they just they form a line, okay,
Mhm.
And these 20 warriors, and the Vikings kind of stop. They're still in the creek bed, kind of on these. Where I say creek bed, but they're out of the water on the side on the beach, still standing on these rather large rocks, and 30 of them now. and Hafton comes jogging up behind, and kind of they make a hole for him, and he walks out in front. And hey, they've been up near Labrador, okay? So they've had communication with these guys already. Should we have somebody that knows we need a slave. We need somebody that will translate for them. And so there's a slave that they had on the boat, and that they had taken from the natives up in Labrador that migrate, let's say. And so Hafton goes and he puts his hand around the neck of the slave, and he kind of brings him forward. And the slave does the interpretation, the translation for him. And so now we have this confrontation, and what happens?
They probably first ask about the girl, and then
I think they will get right to it. I think the concern of the Indians is obviously, hey, or do you come in peace, or do you come in for war? And at this point, I mean, they've got a mission to find this girl. They don't care about trading, although they can trade if it is a means to their end. So Hafton tells the slave to tell them that they are looking for a girl. He goes and he grabs the neck of another one of his warriors with long hair, and one that's bright red, and he holds the guy's hair and says, tell them that we're looking for a young girl, white skin, with red hair. And he holds his red hair, and so the man tells him, the slave tells this to these warriors, and the warriors say no. They don't know where, they've never heard of this, and tell them that she was taken from us a month ago, and from up north, and she belongs to us. She belongs to our chieftain, and we're sent to recover her. And they said, well, why are you down here? She was taken up north. And he explains that he understood that the people that took her came down south, and so then through communication, I think we need to be able to establish, like, these guys need to be able to come up. There needs to be some reason for these guys to help, because these are not going to be the right guys, but they're going to know of the right guys. Okay, so these locals aren't going to be ones that migrate, but they know of the migrating ones. Okay, and they are going to know. They're
enemies with the migrating ones.
Yeah, that would be good.
And that's why they help.
They're enemies. Okay. And also, I think that the Vikings can offer something along the lines of, I mean, they're used to trading. This was a very important person they're going after, and so I think Leif Erikson, their chieftain, would have given them, silver, let's say. And now, I don't know if silver meant a whole lot to these Indians, but metal did for certain.
Mm-hmm. They could trade with canoes for the Indians because they say that they made Bridgeport canoes.
The Indians did?
And the Vikings would probably like it because their boat would get stuck in the shallow water eventually.
Yeah, but the boats will go a long, long way. Now that would be important a little bit later on. So let's say that they established, and I'm kind of absent, like on the first couple of these videos where I had kind of thought through the plot a little bit more. I was more thorough with the visual detail, but this one's more of a plot. And so being, if someone ever wants to write this book, then they're going to have to fill in the visual details and the smells and things like that. But we can do some. But the reason that these guys are going to cooperate, I agree, Abby, is number one, they're going to have a number two, there are 30 of our warriors and only 20 of theirs.
Well, if there's 50 wigwams, and there's one for wigwams.
Yeah, but it'd be, well, we can always knock down the number of the wigwams. And let's say that these guys, and history bears this out. There were some Indian cultures that were quite friendly and open, and then there were some Indian cultures which were the exact opposite, which were very warlike. And even if somebody was warlike, doesn't necessarily mean that they weren't open, but that were quite closed and suspicious and violent toward any outsider. But in this particular case, let's go ahead and assume that these guys, although they came out with warriors, they're trying to protect their land. They see that they're this scary boat, which is larger than any boat that they've used, with all these bright shields hung on the side, is coming to them. They would assume that they were trying to destroy them. These guys, though, they cooperate because what else? They're not going to be interested in silver. Okay, so they're going to have this common enemy, but there's one thing that the Indians and the Vikings traded, I know, was beads.
And they also said alcohol too.
Yeah, that was probably about the time of the white man, though.
Yeah, but that's the first things that they traded.
Really?
Well, that's the first thing it says on Wikipedia.
So Vikings were known for they weren't known for like whiskey or anything, but they were known for beer, like a fermented. I can't remember what they called it. It wasn't exactly beer, but it was a type of fermented drink, and also kept their water from going bad on board.
And it also says they were willing to trade pelts, goods like metal axes, guns, and copper or iron cookware.
That makes a whole lot more sense. Let's do pelts. And let's do weapons. And so let's specifically axes. Okay. Let's do because the Indians, so they trade, so they kind of come up to an agreement, and I might have to cut this a little short because my throat's about to give out. But they come up to an agreement to help, to kind of, they say that, hey, this migrating tribe, these migrating people, they haven't seen them or heard that they've actually come down yet, and so they reason that they might have gotten there ahead of time. And so that kind of excites Hafton, because that means they could kind of like go and look out at where they kind of spend the winter and wait in ambush for them. And so we're going to establish a relationship with these Indians based on trading pelts, because they're going to have, the Vikings are going to have some interesting pelts from up around Labrador. Let's maybe seal or something like that maybe these guys may not have.
All of the people in Maine would also have like lynx spurs.
Okay. So they could establish like a kind of a trade based on pelts, axes, and okay. But the Vikings are the ones that are seeking something. So the Vikings have to be able to bring something of value. And so those are things the Vikings can bring. These other guys can bring. I like the idea of the birch bark canoes if they need them in the future. That could be something that we could bring up, and also the common enemy. So because every year around wintertime, this migrating tribe comes down, and they are a violent tribe, and they end up inevitably stealing a lot of the winter stores from this other tribe. Now, this other tribe stores what? They store salmon. So they've caught fish, they've roasted and dried the meat, and it's what sustains them through the wintertime. Oysters as well is what they can sustain, but I mean, anybody can go and get those. But they end up abusing this other local tribe. So I say that's where we go with it. That's probably a good place to stop as any, but we need to start introducing some characters. Like, in other words, so far all we're doing is we're talking to the warriors. We need to get to the point where we're talking to the chief. We need some interesting characters. We need like a one-legged witch doctor, and we need, a one-eyed, one-legged witch doctor. We need
we need to.
Yeah, we need to have more plot. Something that builds tension. So right now, all we're doing is going ashore, and everybody's happy. You need to have something that builds tension. So there needs to be a character, actually. There needs to be distrust. I would say that there needs to be an inherent distrust in the translator. Because he's a slave, and he may not know exactly all the wording, let's say. So there's inherent distrust of the translator, both in his skill and his loyalty.
Maybe that's where where Michael could come in, because he knows something about the Indians and things. Because didn't his grandfather tell him about something?
Michael, I'm going to say, we got to weave him into this too. So far, he's not doing anything during this whole thing, other than getting cold when he jumps overboard and walks ashore. So I think there needs to be some scenes that, number one, that develop Michael, or Matok is actually his name. He's going to need a unique skill, and I would say that, like, his sister, the blonde, has a unique skill of being able to talk to animals and ghosts. Okay, his mother is kind of a witch doctor, so they expect something of Matok that he doesn't know that he had. He already knew where the safe harbor was, and so they're going to be looking to Matok for, like, what's his skill, like, in the real like, is he kind of like a witch doctor himself?
No, I think he knows the area well, and they don't know why, but
yeah, okay, so this is where he is. I mean, he does kind of know the area a little bit, at least this river, let's say, because it's the same. Well, the river would change over the hundreds of years, but he knows the basics of the river. Okay, so that's one thing. But he's not from this area.
But he's from Maine, so he has been on field trips around the river, Indian places, and knows like the maps and stuff.
Well, it's kind of hard to know Maine, you know. Okay, so let's do some thinking on that. We need some tension.
You could have some religious confrontation too.
Okay, religious confrontation, but we also need, like, we need some serious tension. We need, like, I think we need one of the Vikings to, like, seriously mess up. Like, he kills one of the villagers for some reason. Okay. like one of the Vikings, and it's, you know, we could. Why would he kill one of the villagers?
Um,
He ran off with something. Like one of the villagers. One of the villagers was in a canoe and going out to the boat. There were two of them who were in a canoe going out to the boat to just kind of look. They noticed, like, they just wanted, I don't know why they were going out there. We don't even need to establish why, other than there was a confrontation, and one of the villagers, who was a very important one, let's say, we can establish who they were. But one of the villagers ends up getting killed by one of the 5 men they left on the boat.
mm.
Okay.
So on the boat and don't know what's going on.
Right. Okay. We're going to leave it there. It's been almost, believe it or not, about 45 minutes. And this is kind of just how we do this. We would love for some more of you guys to join us, because as you can see, as you build a story, the more people that are involved in it, the better it is. And right now it's you know, it's moving a little bit slower than I'm used to. And that's fine. I mean, we'll keep on doing this, but we would love for some more of you guys to join us and to give us your input on how it goes. And like I say, maybe one of you guys would want to write this story one day. So that's about it. We will talk to you later. We'll see you again. We'll send out the link here fairly soon. Post it into First Class. We'll also set up the next week's Hangout, Google Hangout, and we'll post that link into First Class, and you know, let you know when it is, and the link will let you know where it is, and we'll go from there. So thank you guys, and we will see you. We'll see you next time.